Hi, I'm Stewart Spinks and welcome to episode 362 of my podcast, Beekeeping Short and Sweet. Today, I'm joined by Chris Farrell, a beekeeper from Kent who has day-to-day experience of the Asian Hornet and the effects it has on local beekeeping. Beekeeping Short and Sweet, a beekeeping podcast for the inquisitive beekeeper with a short attention span. A beekeeper, in fact, just like me. This week's podcast is brought to you, in part, by High Five Multi-Guard. So,
when you need a little peace of mind that your bees are safe from dangers of all kind, pesticides, hornets, wasps and mice are no match for High Five. The High Five Multi-Guard is the best one in town. Keeps your bees safe all year round. The ultimate solution has been found. It's High Five. The High Five Multi-Guard fits nearly all beehives and makes beekeeping much easier. High Five.
So this morning I'm joined by Chris Farrell from Kent somewhere, and we'll cover off exactly where in Kent Chris is from. Morning, Chris. How are you?
Stuart, lovely to talk to you.
Yeah, so Chris, just to give you a little bit of background of how I got to know Chris. Chris is beekeeper in Kent and signed up to my Patreon page, and unfortunately is down in Kent where we've got these Asian hornets kind of creeping in and causing a bit of a nuisance. And what I really wanted to do was to talk to somebody who is a beekeeper and who is dealing with this situation on an ongoing basis and just get some idea of what it actually feels like to be a beekeeper with Asian Hornet literally on your doorstep. So I'm really grateful to you, Chris, for joining me this morning. We've kind of been chatting about this for a while, and you've put some notes together that we're going to talk through. First, before we get started with that, do you want to just explain how you got into beekeeping and how long you've been a beekeeper and how many hives you've got? Because people always want to know those kind of details, don't they?
My career was in the army, and unfortunately I became ill with a tropical disease when I was in Hong Kong, which meant that I had to be medically discharged. And I struggled for many years and became involved with Help for Heroes. And my social worker, rather than telling me to lay on a couch and be psychoanalyzed, said, "Why don't you do a beekeeping course, Chris? We've got an introduction to beekeeping." And so I thought, oh, great, beekeeping. That plays into my situation with the army of loving a uniform and a bit of jeopardy. So yes, I applied for the course and went on it and was absolutely blown away. And since then, I've just been passionate about beekeeping. And I started off being mentored by a local beekeeper who had a couple of hives in a local community garden. And then I sort of started my own journey with a single omelette bee house, which is a plastic sort of long hive for the first year, and then went over to 14 by 12 cedar hives. And I would say at the moment I probably have about a dozen colonies, 9 of which are cedar hives, and a couple of nukes, 3 or 4 nukes over 2 sites.
And how's your season this year been, accepting the Asian Hornet situation? Apart from that, how have you got on this year?
Even though I treated over the winter and made sure that they had plenty of food, I did have quite a few winter losses, which I don't know about you, Stuart, but I cry when I lose a colony. I just kind of think, I've done everything for you. What more could I do? It just hurts me. And I think that's good for beekeepers to actually feel, some hurt and emotion when they lose a hive, and what could I have done better? So part of the early season was queen rearing and making up for the winter losses. And because I have most of my hives in an orchard, the spring crop was really, really good from the fruit tree blossoms, but then kind of tailed off. And my other hives that I had, which back onto a golf course and some woods, didn't do so well during the spring, but had a pretty good summer crop. But like all of us, the summer was kind of boom and bust. Everything came and went. So probably by mid-July, there was nothing more going in, and then there's the worry of, should I take the crop off or should I leave it for them? And so I left it on until probably mid-August before I took it off. But yeah, reasonable, reasonable.
Cool. Okay. No, well, that's good. Good to hear. It's nice to hear that you are queen rearing as well, coming out of the winter and needing to produce some of your own queens. That's always good. And you did mention previously that you're doing the BBKA modules. How's that going?
I'm working my way through them, mainly because I don't have a social life, Stuart. So I've got the time in the evenings to study for the modules, which I don't find easy. But so far, I've done 5 of the modules. I started off with module 6, which is the behavior one, which absolutely blew me away about just how interesting and involved these tiny little creatures are with their pheromones and communication within the hive, and the timeline of their different jobs before they get to the front of the hive and eventually forage. But this year I did my general husbandry practical exam, which is a 3-hour exam, and 2 master beekeepers from the BBKA came over to me, and I took them to my hives and was put through my paces. And I would definitely recommend the general husbandry to anybody that wants to improve their practical beekeeping skills. And you need to kind of take a run up at it. But a lot of the things that they ask you to do, for instance, I didn't really know what I'd heard of the Pagden, and I'd probably done a Pagden, but didn't know that it had a name. So it's just really putting names to things, and
Right.
hygiene is really important.
And you passed the general husbandry, didn't you?
Pass.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thankfully I passed.
That's great. Having done all of that, now we get into the Asian Hornet experience. So you've been keeping bees for a while. When did the Asian Hornet kind of rear its yellow face and start to become a problem or part of your beekeeping journey?
So it was just something on the periphery that I'd heard about. But it was the summer of 2023 that I had kind of up close and personal experience with them. So I had amongst my hives a single hive in a friend's garden that backed onto the local canal. For Christmas the previous year, I'd bought from Thorns beekeeping suppliers the small resin rectangular clear things that had an Asian hornet in them, and I'd given my friend one because I'm a bit tight at Christmas, and it had stayed on her kitchen table, all through the year. And we were just going out of her back gate onto the canal path, and she said to me, "Is that an Asian hornet in the brambles?" And I looked at it and was immediately in denial, thinking, of all the beekeepers in all the world, why is this happening to me?
Yeah, yeah.
And I got my camera out to take a photo of it, got my phone out, but by the time I faffed around, it had flown off. But it was on the brambles which were going over, and there were lots of wasps and other insects around there. Funnily enough, my beehive in her garden was probably only about 10 yards or so from where the hornet was walking, but wasn't interested in my hive. So anyway, I went home and I bought some of the Beta Plama traps. So I put a trap up, and the following day there was a hornet, an Asian hornet in there, and there was absolutely no doubt that it was.
What did you do once you discovered that it was an Asian hornet?
I kind of knew that I had to do something, but I wasn't actually too sure what I had to do. So I rang another beekeeping friend, and he said, take the trap down, stick some food in there, and keep it alive and get hold of the National Bee Unit. So I took the trap home. I thought I need to get some pictures of this. So I took the lid off the trap, thinking that the Asian hornet was dead. And it turned out that it wasn't dead. Trying to catch it outside in the garden, managed to get the trap on top of it. Took some photos of it, thinking, what shall I feed it? I gave it some dog food and
Okay.
a little bit of water, and then rang the secretary of my bee association, Dover and District Beekeeping Association, and she said, "No, put it on the freezer, Chris, in the trap." So in gone to all this trouble to keep the Asian hornet alive, I then put it in the freezer to kill it.
Okay.
And then felt a little bit embarrassed the following day when the local bee inspector, lovely Lisa, came round to collect it, and there was all this dog food frozen in the trap.
Excellent. And so you passed the hornet on to the National Bee Unit. Is that how it worked?
Yes, yeah. Lisa from the National Bee Unit, the hornet, and put it in a little test tube full of alcohol, which was then sent up to the Farrell lab, which is just outside York, for DNA testing. And they're interested to see whether it's related to any other hornets that have been caught locally, and also they poke around in the abdomen to find out what it's been eating.
Interesting. So, having taken the trap down, did you put the trap back up once you'd unfrozen the dog food? Did you kind of clean it out and put the trap back up?
I put another trap out, and by the time I took Lisa, after she'd sorted out the frozen hornet, and there were three hornets now in the trap.
Right. Wow.
And what she did was surprising to me at the time. She took the lid off the trap so that the hornets could fly out. And I kind of thought, well, why are you doing that? You need to catch them. But the idea is that the hornets will return to their nest and keep coming back to what was a trap, but now has become a bait station. And what the MBU did over the next couple of days, they sat in little picnic chairs, sort of fishing chairs, and watched the hornets come and go. And they used our queen marking pens, the Posca pens, to catch some of the hornets, catch them in the net, and then mark their thoraxes with different coloured pens. And apparently, they work on the principle that the hornet will fly off about 100 meters a minute. So if it's away for 10 minutes, then the nest is, say, 500 meters away, 5 minutes away.
Yep.
They offload very quickly and then come back. And also that they're after the direction that the hornets are flying off in, because they fly in a straight line, apparently back to the nest. And then gradually over a period of days, they move the nest along that line to the nest, the traps towards the direction they were flying off. And they tracked them down to a local wooded area. In fact, I'm just looking out the window at the on the other side of the valley where the nest was found. But they were in the woods for a number of days trying to actually physically locate the nest. And eventually they found it about, I don't know, at the top of a sycamore tree, which at that time of the year was one sycamore tree amongst thousands and covered in leaves. And, you know, I take my hat off to them that they managed to find it in there.
It must be
And
incredibly difficult to spot a nest, even a large nest, in the top of the canopy of a tree in amongst all those other trees as well.
absolutely. And so when they actually tracked it down, they sent for professional tree surgeons that came out from Winchester. And I sort of bothered them and said, look, you know, I found the hornet. Can I be there when it's taken down? And they were saying, no, it's too dangerous. But, you know, I wore them down.
Well
And
done.
they said, well, you can be here, but just keep out of the way. And so the tree guys turned up, as the MBU were, dressed in sort of Michelin suits,
Yeah.
thickness bee suits, which I think BB wear, and they used a series of ropes to climb up the tree, and they had what looked like a harpoon, which had a toxin in it, a powder which they pumped into the nest. And sometime later, I wasn't present. They must have said, "Don't tell Chris, but we're going to come back in a couple of hours and take the nest down." But they were also looking for the primary nest, which they eventually found in a metal bird box that somebody had put up in the woods, and it must have been, a pterodactyl nest. It was just absolutely massive. This
Wow.
But that was the primary nest, which is a lot smaller, and that's where the queen, when she comes out of hibernation, she'll look for a potential small nest site, and she'll build up in there. And once she has a number of hornets, say, I don't know, 30 or 40, they'll then start looking nearby for a potential secondary nest site, which will be the enormous basketball sized nest that we used to see.
Yeah, yeah. Now, you're in, I guess, a lucky position in some ways, in some respects, because you've got Jackie Thomas as your Asian Hornet coordinator, haven't you? And I've spoken to Jackie on the podcast before. I'm hoping to get her back onto the podcast maybe later this year to catch up and have an update with her. But she's a driving force for Asian Hornet monitoring down in Kent, and you're now working with her to kind of track down the Hornet.
That's right. And we are so fortunate to have Jackie Thomas, just going to big her up as a master beekeeper. And she was an ex-science teacher, so she has a way with people of getting us all to behave ourselves and do what she says. But basically, the whole of Dover and District Beekeeping Association has been divided up into 1 kilometre squares by Jackie on an ordnance survey map. And the members have been asked to take a block of 4 squares and place an Asian hornet trap as close to the middle of the square as possible. But because we cover such a large geographical area, I'm not sure what our square kilometre radius is, but we still can't cover the whole of our area with traps. And a lot of our workforce, a lot of our beekeepers are elderly or awaiting hip operations or have other limitations.
Sure.
And many work. So it's a big commitment for the remaining members, because the traps need to be checked every couple of days to let out any bycatch, and also to refill them with the bait that we use, which is the same as the MBU use, which is called Trap-It. It's a sort of pinky, purpley type liquid.
Yeah, I know the stuff. Obviously, there are lots of different traps available that you can buy commercially. But I know when I spoke to Jackie, she'd got a homemade one. Is that the kind of trap that you've been using?
We use a mixture of the traps that Jackie and her husband Alan have sort of made on a industrial basis for us. We also use the Vito Farmer small traps. And I'm sure that Jackie would be happy to let you have her instructions, her recipe for making her traps.
Oh, great.
Which work very, very well.
Okay. But then, of course, you need some bait for it. And for people like me who are a little bit lazy when it comes to making up things, and I don't have a dog. Well, Steph's got a dog, but he eats kibble, which is a dry food, so it's probably not very attractive to Asian hornets. The Trap-It liquid, is that kind of expensive? It sounds like it might be.
Yeah, the cheapest way that we can buy it is in 5-litre containers, which actually, once they're washed out, the trap bait itself is meant to be harmless. And I've thoroughly washed them out, and I now use them to put my sugar syrup
Oh, excellent.
into
Yeah.
feed my bees.
Recycle and reuse.
Absolutely. But they are very expensive. They're sort of 55, 65 pounds per container. we don't seem to be able to get any discount off anybody. And it is a big drain on the association funds. We were given some money. I'm not on our committee, so I don't know how much by the BBKA to buy traps and the traplet solution.
Right.
But we'll go through the solution, very, very quickly. It's very volatile. So we need to fill the traps up every couple of days.
Right. So it needs to be replaced fairly frequently then.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And when we replace it, obviously, something I haven't mentioned, we put a little bit of the sponge in the bottom of the traps so that which soaks up the trappet, but it means that any reasonably sized bycatch isn't going to die in there. So
Okay.
when I go to my traps, especially down here in the south, we get an awful lot of European hornet, and as long as there's no Asian hornets in the trap, I'll take the lid off and get the European hornets out. I'll pick up a stick and they're usually a bit dazed and covered in trappet, and I'll just take them out and put them on the grass
Sure.
or whatever.
So when you put your traps up, now I guess is the time when we're expecting queens to be produced and they'll go off and hibernate. So is now the best time to get traps out?
Spring trapping, as soon as the weather warms up, say sort of be with climate change, could be February, March time. So some of us will put out kind of sentinel traps around our apiaries, hoping to catch the early queens. But really, the nests start building up and the secondary nests start being made May, June, July time. They will meet their maximum size around about this time of the year. And in some of the big nests, they can be maybe 8,000
Wow.
hornets in there. So the king will start making the drones first, and then queen cells will come a little bit later. And she can make apparently up to about 300 queens. And these will then get mated, feed up, and look for somewhere to hibernate. So getting back to answer your question, yes, at the summer and into the autumn, which I always think is a bit strange because I kind of think, well, they should be dying off now, not making new queens. But yes, chopping is, the only way. If you don't look, you won't find.
Sure.
So get the traps out there.
So just thinking back to this year, Chris, when did you first kind of come face to face with the Asian Hornets?
Call from the MBU asking if I could put some traps out around the nearest town to me, which is Hythe on the Kent coast. Somebody had reported a sighting to the MBU, and I was told to put them out in the specific area. So I looked on the map and thought, oh, I've got a friend who lives around there. I'll put one in their magnolia tree in the front garden, and put some other traps out. And then heard from the MBU that they tracked down the primary nest and hadn't found anything else, and to take the traps down. So I thought, oh, okay, I'll get round to doing that. But I forgot this particular trap. And a couple of weeks later, I got a phone call from my friend Mo saying that he'd seen what he thought was an Asian hornet around the trap that I hadn't refilled for a couple of weeks, and sent a photo, and it was definitely an Asian hornet.
Right.
So I sent his photo off to the MBU, and they said to refill the trap and again open it up to make it a bait station,
Yeah.
and to, if I had time, to sit and watch during the day any comings and goings and to get an idea of what direction they were flying in.
Okay.
And the next day, Dan from the MBU came down, and we both sat in the sunshine and watched the hornets come and go. And he got kind of fishing net on the pole out and tipped the trap into the fishing net and marked some of the hornets with different colour pens, our queen marking pens, and then waited to see how long it took them to come back to the trap. I'm sorry about Cedric the dog growling in the background.
It's fine.
And they were going in the same direction as a primary nest that they'd found earlier. And it turned out eventually that they found a large secondary nest in a copper beech tree in the garden in the same road as they found the primary nest. They hadn't realised that they'd gone on from the primary nest to make a secondary.
I kind of think that it's great when you can find the nest and it's in a tree and you can get guys up ropes and you can destroy them. But there have to be times when actually these nests are inaccessible. And I know that you've experienced that, haven't you? Or at least you know of somebody that's experienced that.
Pretty beekeeper from our association who lives in Folkestone and keeps bees on top of the cliffs, the White Cliffs of Dover, has had terrible problems with the Asian hornets predating his hives, and he's actually lost colonies to the Asian hornets. And although the MBU knew about the problem, it seems that they triaged other easier to find nests rather than finding his nests or nests as it turned out, um, because his Asian hornets were nesting actually on the cliff face below his hives, and I've heard that the MBU had to get rock climbers involved on ropes to locate the nests, and fortunately, these have now been destroyed. But at our last association meeting, this particular gentleman who kept these for decades was really, really demoralized and emotional, and said that when the hornets were attacking his hives, he couldn't bring himself to go to his apiary because he felt such pain because of what he was seeing happening to his bees, bees that he'd cared for years and years. And I think this is going to be one of the big issues for beekeepers. It's not just the physical fight against the hornet, but it's going to be the emotional toll that it's going to take on us. And I think if we don't eradicate them, certainly here in Kent, it's just going to be too much of an emotional burden, and many beekeepers, as has been the case on the continent, will give up.
Sure. It is something that we really do need to work as a group across the UK in defending our bees against the Asian hornet. And I do think that maybe more associations could help the Kent associations in what they're doing. I don't really know how that would work or how associations could help, but I guess they can always get in touch through association secretaries and offer some help if they want to. So there's always a route forward, and of course it's not a problem until it is a problem. So for me currently, I don't believe I've got any Asian hornets in or around any of our apiaries, maybe in Norfolk at all. So it's not a problem for me, but actually it really is a problem for me because they're in Kent and they're quite likely to move up fairly quickly. In Suffolk, we've got the ports where the Asian hornet can come in on container ships and the like, and quite easily be blown across the channel on the high winds. So ultimately, I think we could really all end up, certainly in the east coast and the east of England, we're all vulnerable, I think. And once they start moving across the country, I'm sure that somebody said that the queens could fly up to 50 kilometers. Is that right?
Heard that, and hopefully so far that hasn't been the case down here. There has been a nest that was found, and when genetically tested, it was found that for the first time the hornets had actually overwintered and started a second generation nest. But that was found within a couple of kilometres of the first nest. What I'm thinking with no knowledge whatsoever, but it doesn't stop me having an opinion, is that on the continent they found that they can fly up to 50 kilometres to start up a new nest. But I'm wondering whether that's a territorial thing and that they need to find a territory where there aren't any other hornets. And maybe at the moment that isn't the case in the UK, and they can just find a new territory, reasonably close to their kind of mother nest,
Yeah, so uh, when you've got a low population in terms of the nests, they don't need to travel very far at all before they establish themselves in a hornet-free area. But once you get maybe a specific density of nests, they tend to fly further afield, perhaps.
Said that um, in France, there's been some studies done, and there's up to 12 nests per square kilometre. So maybe they've just run out of space, and they have to kind of keep
Yeah.
doubling up.
Interesting. Well, we'll wait to see. It's really interesting, all of the aspect of how these hornets are gonna move around and how they will gradually move across the country. I think specifically what I'd like to talk to you about is the kind of personal in my backyard kind of experiences that you've had. And I know that you've had Asian hornets in the back garden. So can we just finally talk about that, the way that you discovered them and how that all came about?
I was told that there'd been a sighting quite near to where I live, about 50 meters away, and I went out to check my trap, and there was nothing in it. But I also had at that time, although I don't have hives in my garden, I had three mating nukes in my garden, and looked at those and found that there were Asian hornets hawking around my mating nukes. And the nukes had been there for just over a week, and they had I'd put open cells, open queen cells in there, and probably about, I don't know, 300 or 400 bees. So when I saw that the hornets in front of the mating nuke, I also noticed that at one of the mating nukes, the bees were out the front fanning, and they'd opened up their Nasanov glands on their back. And my concern was that the queen was out on the mating flight. And then I was in the predicament of what do I do? I can't just close the hives up, because the purpose of them is to produce a mated queen. But what do I do? Do I wait for her to return? Has she already been eaten by the hornets? So I didn't know what to do. So I waited until the evening and closed the mating nukes up, and took them to another apiary where actually I'd found Asian hornets before, but the MBU had been along and destroyed the nest. So I was reasonably hopeful that they'd be safe. But the following morning, I went back and checked on the mating nukes in their last location, and found that one of them was full of wasps, and the other two were completely empty. And sadly, the queen cells had grown and hatched, but there was just nothing left in them. Just some of the fondant that the wasps were clearing out. So that was really, really sad, and that made me really worry about what the future holds for beekeepers.
I think you're absolutely right to be concerned, Chris, and it's all well and good for maybe beekeepers who've got lots of colonies, and if they get one that disappears, they can quite easily replace it. But I know that there are many, many beekeepers out there that only have two or three beehives, and if their bees at the bottom of the garden suddenly become the focus of attention for these hornets, then it can very quickly turn into a very frightful and anxious time for that beekeeper. So I do understand exactly where you're coming from. So uh, what is it, in wrapping up, what is it that beekeepers you think can do to help themselves, but also to help the general situation here? What can we do as beekeepers to maybe put in place some kind of system where we can monitor?
Somebody famous once said that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance, and that's what we need to do. We need to be, I think, from now onwards, forever vigilant wherever we are in the country. As I've said before, if you don't look, you won't find. So even if you're not in an area that has Asian hornets, then trap, trap, let out any bycatch, but keep trapping. And also let the public and other beekeepers know what the issue is. The MBU have a free supply of information, A4 posters, laminated or just paper ones, postcard size information cards, and also credit card size ones, which you can get from the MBU by the thousand for nothing. And just at any opportunity, engage with the public, whether that's at you're selling your honey at a fair or a farmer's market. Get a pile of these cards and hand them out, and find out about Asian hornets. Read Sarah Bunker's very, very good book, the Asian Hornet Handbook, and just remain vigilant.
Excellent. And I think that's excellent advice. I think that's great advice for all beekeepers across the UK. And in closing, I know that you've conducted a jam-based experiment to see which jams the hornets prefer. And what did you come up with? Let's finish on a fun note, because we can get a little bit sad and despondent with the Asian hornet, but let's finish on some fun.
Decided whilst I was watching the Asian hornets that I should make the best use of my time and multitask. And I thought I'd conduct a jam-based experiment to find out what jam they might prefer. Because of course, whilst all this is going on, we have a bumper season for the wasps. So there's loads of wasps around as well. So I looked through my cupboards and I found some strawberry jam, some bramble jam, and some marmalade. And I mixed them with some water and a little bit of sugar. And I'd heard somewhere that a pinch of yeast would help as well. I put them in identical containers, and for some reason, I thought if I'm a proper scientist, I should have a control. So I had a little bowl of water there as well. And the idea was to see what bait the hornets and the wasps preferred. So interestingly, it was the marmalade that the hornets and the wasps preferred. And definitely the marmalade. So if you're thinking of trapping wasps, then marmalade could be your jam of choice. But the experiment was rudely interrupted by Cedric, my dog, who came over and knocked the table over. So that was the end of the experiment. He's obviously not a fan of citizen science.
Do you think that the homemade concoctions compare well with the trap-it bait, or is the trap-it bait the one that we really ought to be going for?
No, I think the trap-it bait is definitely the gold standard. That's their food source of choice. But it's expensive. Not everybody can get hold of it, and it's like if somebody asked me what I want to eat, I'd say fish and chips and chocolate. But if that's not available, then I have to go for something lesser, and so will the wasps and the hornets. If there isn't trap-it available, then they'll go for anything else.
That's brilliant. Thank you so very much, Chris. I know you're a little bit anxious about coming and chatting to me on the podcast. I really, really do appreciate the time that you've given me today to chat and share your experiences with everybody, because it's all well and good having the science, and there's lots of people out there doing some incredible science with this. But at the end of the day, it's the beekeeper in their back garden that is the one that is going to have to deal with it on a regular basis. So thank you so much for coming along, and we will obviously chat again in the very near future. So thank you very much.
It's lovely talking to you.
For all of you who haven't yet signed up to my Patreon page, I, together with Steph, have been creating beekeeping content for many years now. And if you're looking for some straightforward, down-to-earth tips and techniques, help and advice, then do take a look at my Patreon page. We have over 1,600 individual beekeeping posts, videos and podcasts filled with useful and timely help and advice. My approach is pragmatic and calm, sometimes entertaining, but always with help and support for beekeepers at the heart of what I do. I keep my videos short and concise wherever possible. No waffle, no flannel, just honest beekeeping advice from years of keeping bees. Take a look and join me for the new 2025 beekeeping season. It'll cost you less than a jar of honey. Head over to Google and search for Patreon and the Norfolk Honey Company.